Stephanie, you're currently working in the Anti-Trafficking Services Program of the Salvation Army. What does your job entail?
Well, I am the program coordinator, so I run the anti-trafficking services for all victims of human trafficking that are identified here in Orange County. So our program is one of two service providers in Orange County that are a part of the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force. We serve the foreign national population. We're currently expanding to be serving more appropriately the domestic victims of sex trafficking too. But our primary focus for the last, since the program has been founded, has been foreign nationals.
Okay, all right. And tell us about what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Oh gosh, it's a lot. The days can look so different because when we're working with victims of trauma, you know, they take precedent. But ideally, the job is managing our employees, our case managers, making sure that they provide comprehensive and holistic case management. I also supervise graduate level interns from social work programs around the area, including APU. And that just teaching them what it is to provide clinical services from a case management perspective, so understanding their role, understanding what case management looks like versus therapeutic services look like, but also teaching them what clinical skills can be developed even in the case management role. And it's just making sure that we meet the needs of our survivors. The nature of our survivors is that they're in a program from anywhere from 18 to 24 months, which is a long time to serve one individual. So there's a lot of different milestones we walk through with our survivors, and so I just supervise all those milestones. I make sure that their immigration relief is being addressed, that their public benefits are being addressed, that they're getting the proper referrals to mental health, to medical, dental, just, you know, as I mentioned, providing holistic case management services, meaning we treat the whole person. So it's kind of it's comprehensive in its approach. I'm also a first responder for the county through the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force. So anytime we get a new victim identified, whether it's a foreign national or a domestic victim of trafficking, I get called out. So it can be any hour of the day or night. We are on a schedule, and we have certain days where we're required to go out and meet law enforcement. It can be local law enforcement, FBI, Homeland Security investigations. We just have to make ourselves available to be able to serve those in crisis from the point of identification. Another piece of my job is just kind of making sure that that all the statistics, the stats are getting in monthly so that we can show outcomes of our program, show off the effectiveness of our program, which was a huge help in taking the more community specialized focus in grad school, because it taught me a lot about that macro approach and how necessary it is to make sure that a program remains sustainable and it, you know, continues to be effective for its clients. And I think the last piece is just collaborating with like the different organizations in the community, that networking piece. We couldn't possibly serve a survivor holistically if we didn't have good collaborative partners throughout the county. That could be, like I mentioned, mental health partners or just churches to help provide services or help provide donations for our survivors to keep them sustained while they're kind of working through their trauma.
Okay. Sounds like every day is very different.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So you had mentioned that you were in the Community Leadership and Program Administration specialization at APU.
Yeah.
How do you feel that that specialization prepared you for the role you have now?
When I was in the program, I remember learning a lot of this macro focus, obviously, and thinking, wow, that seems so much above what I'll ever be doing, you know, because I was in grad school, I just didn't have the skills or the confidence, and then I became a case manager to start. So it wasn't until I took this program over that I realized just how prepared and skilled I became in grad school for this position, which is very exciting. We just, like I mentioned, we're starting to move into working with domestic victims of sex trafficking. And what that entails is the purchase of a new home for a safe home that is holistic and trauma-informed. And just in the process of getting that approved and building out the programming and showing its outcomes and showing how effective we can be, I used tools that I learned in grad school, like very specifically, I never ever thought that I would use a logic model in my professional career. I would hope to, because I loved doing them in grad school, but that was one of the most effective ways to show how our program would be used and how well we would be able to serve this population. And that was started 2 years ago when we just purchased a home and we just got the program approved. So we're actually going to be opening in January. And a big part of feeling the confidence and the skill of being able to move forward and develop this programming is because I felt like I was given the right tools in grad school to do it. So it gave me the confidence to be able to at least try it, you know?
Yeah.
So it was great.
Good. That's good to know. Classes are actually
I know.
help you.
They're effective.
Yeah. So, can you tell us about the importance of holistic, trauma-informed, and survivor-informed care when you're working with your clients?
So through the years in working with victims of trauma, both research has shown, government, federal research has shown through grants, and then private research has shown there's a lot less private research when it comes to victims of trauma or victims of human trafficking because it's such an emerging field. But what we have found is that the holistic approach, meaning treating someone as more than the trauma they've experienced, treating them as a whole person, knowing that, you know, in Maslow's hierarchy that we learned very, very early on, that we don't just meet their physiological needs or their safety needs, we also meet their community needs, their emotional needs, their, you know, almost to the point of self-actualization. And they guide that. They guide that from a trauma-informed perspective, but we give them the resources to be able to address all of those needs and to be able to heal holistically from the trauma they've experienced to the extent that they can. Trauma-informed is more just understanding that we're working with somebody that has experienced such severe trauma that we have to see things through that perspective. So from a spiritual perspective, it really is just giving them the benefit of the doubt and showing grace, you know, and just loving on them through the trauma they've experienced. From more of a clinical approach, it looks like, you know, making sure that our program is set up, that we're serving our clients in a way that allows for those triggers to happen and us to be trained and prepared to be able to handle that with them to the best of our ability. And so, you know, in a class that I teach, I share a lot about just the little things that we could do, like when we invite a victim into, let's say, an area to sit down and do an intake, we always make sure that they choose where they sit. That's a trauma-informed approach because we don't know the triggers that they experience. We don't know if they want to be closer to a door, you know, to escape, or if they feel more comfortable being protected from the door. So we allow them to choose. That's just a very small example of that, but we do that in our programming. That's part of the survivor-informed piece of our programming. We give the survivor a voice in our programming, so we do evaluations where our survivors give us input because we want to continue to always be trauma-informed, and the best way to do that is to ask a survivor, how do you feel about this? What would you change? And they do. They give us great insight, and we can adjust our program, you know, in regards to that insight. Another piece of the trauma-informed is understanding that that my employees are working, you know, are very at high risk of vicarious trauma. And so that's kind of built into our program. We meet weekly. We make sure I kind of check in with everybody. I'm a big proponent of self-care days. I'm a big proponent of taking a mental health day if you need to. And I'm a big proponent of boundaries so that our survivors are protected by boundaries, but also so that my employees and graduate interns are protected by boundaries so they don't begin to take on all of that and then just, you know, you start to see boundaries blur and then, you know, and then we start walking down the path of burnout. So that to me is part of that whole trauma-informed piece as well.
Thank you so much for meeting with me and being willing to share your job
Thank you.
with us and anyone else who watches this.
Yes, thank you so much.